Welcome to the All of You podcast, where we believe healthy relationships are created by growing individually and pursuing a healthy relationship with yourself.
So let's take a deep breath. Settle in and grow together.
What are you laughing at?
That I started the podcast without a mic. It's like being a boat captain without a boat.
I remember my first time.
We're like 30 episodes in. I don't need a microphone.
Logistically, we're probably like
100.
75 to 100
Yeah.
episodes in, but yeah.
That doesn't help my case, but here I am. I'm mic'd up now.
Okay. How you feeling?
Oh, in this moment
Yeah,
or in
today.
life?
Yeah, just in life.
In this moment, I feel excited to do an episode. I feel at peace. I feel balanced. Got a little walk in today and a good breakfast, and I'm feeling good. But I think I just have a general baseline level of stress that I've been feeling lately, with a lot of unknowns in our life currently and just trying to figure a lot out. But what about you?
I have been juggling quite a few emotions, I think, like in this season, and I'm handling them well, I think, but there's a lot that I feel like I could be doing better right now in my own personal like self-care. And I haven't been terrible as far as like where I want to be, but we've been going to yoga, we've been making time to read, been making time to kind of go inward a little bit, but I'd like to be meditating more, and I think that would serve me well right now.
Yeah, you're right. I feel like we got a little off our meditating game post honeymoon.
Yeah.
Kind of like lost the rhythm of it.
It's been busy, and I think that in that busyness, sometimes it's easy to get off track, and so I think I'm just calling it out, and maybe saying it to anyone listening on the podcast might help keep me accountable.
Yeah. Well, you know what it was too is we had a routine going during the season of getting the house ready for the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And routine helps me, and I think probably most people, with keeping their habits. So when it's like part of the routine, you just kind of like, you're in full swing. It's like autopilot. But coming back from the honeymoon, we were really out. We were like, what's the new routine? We don't have a wedding to plan. We don't have to turn the house into a venue. So the routine felt a little bit different. And then I think we just got to figure out a new flow.
Yeah, exactly. We're kind of getting in sync, I think, a little bit with it. But so today we wanted to talk about
Depression.
Dun.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's almost like a trigger word.
I think it's an important one to talk about because while, just like you said, there's like a little bit of a stigma attached to the word, it's so common. It's so common. I've had seasons struggling with depression. You've had seasons struggling with depression. Maybe we just think it's common because we both have, but actually I don't think that's true. I think a lot of people have struggled with it to varying degrees. So why not talk about it? I think the goal is just to help people feel a little bit more seen in their struggle.
Yeah, because awareness is kind of the key to it all, I think. And there are, one thing I was thinking about, I think I thought about this in the middle, because I knew we were going to talk about it today. And I think I woke up in the middle of the night, kind of like half dreaming. And I had this thought around depression and just how unaware I was when I was depressed. Like I didn't understand what that was. So I don't want to say that no one who doesn't understand depression is depressed. Like I wouldn't say that, make that statement, but I think that for me, it was really scary, not at the time, but like looking back on myself, it's kind of like alarming that I had no idea how to empathize with someone who was depressed or really resonate, like really feel that feeling because I was ignoring it in myself. And so it was just like a total lack of awareness on my part of, if you were to ask younger Dave, what does depression feel like? I would have been like, I don't know, they're just sad all the time. Like I would have almost probably had this energy that's like, they're not, they just don't have the right mindset, or they just need to work harder, or they're lazy. I probably would have had the feeling like they're lazy, like somebody who's depressed is lazy. And that's because of my lack of understanding of my own depression. Do you know
So
what I
when
mean?
so I guess my question would be, when you did think that way, that someone who was depressed was lazy, had you not experienced depression yet, or you had experienced depression but you weren't aware enough to label it as depression?
Yeah, the latter. But I also think, kind of hot take, I think everyone has depression. Like, not labeled, like, I don't think everyone has a clinical diagnosed depression, but everyone has depressed. Like, there's a spectrum of depression, right? I don't think anyone on this planet hasn't, I don't think, if you're over the age of 10 years old, I don't think you've never experienced depression. That's what I wish somebody would have told me. I wish somebody would have told me, like, do you know that you have depressed feelings sometimes? And I'd be like, no, I don't. I've never had depression before. And they'd be like, yeah, like, this is the conversation I needed somebody to have with me. And they need to sit me down and go, I need, like, I'll do this with the girls. Like, I will have this conversation with my daughters and I'll say, like, this is what depressed feels like. And you need to know that, because you are the only one inside your body and inside your head that can like raise the flag that it's getting worse. So it's really important that you have a barometer for your own depression and depressed feelings, because if you are unaware of them, then they could creep up on you and it could get worse and worse and worse. And for me, that's exactly what happened. I probably had a level 1 to 2 depression I was carrying throughout my life, maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6. It wasn't until it got to 9 and 10 that I even was able to come to terms with my own depressed feelings, that I was able to accept, like, oh, this is real and I need to address this. Like, this might kill me. So, did I have it and was just unaware, or did I just never have it? And I just don't, like, do you think anyone just never has struggled with depression at all? I have a hard time believing no one's had that feeling, or there's anyone that exists that has never had that feeling.
I guess that comes down to your definition of depression, and if you're labeling it as a feeling or a kind of state of being that lasts for an extended amount of time. Because I think it's one thing to be
What's
like,
your take?
so I would define depression in many ways, but one of them being like extremely hopeless and having really self-critical thoughts, losing your interest in your hobbies, having a hard time accomplishing daily tasks because you're unmotivated. Um, it's like feelings of extreme sadness and just like a lack of zest for life,
Yeah.
like would be some of the ways that I would,
Lethargic almost.
yeah. those are some of the ways that I would describe it. And so I guess I'll speak to it through the lens of my experience with it. I have PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and it has to do with my cycle and my hormones. And one of the symptoms of PMDD is depression. And so once a month, about a week before I get my period, I'll have like a depressive episode that is extreme. It's like I can go all the way to suicidal ideation. I can feel completely unlike myself. I am super hopeless, overly critical, dark thoughts, but it doesn't last more than like a day or two. But when it happens, it is so heavy. And then I would compare that with I've had seasons in my life where things have happened that have caused me to have a season of depression where I'm working through what happened to me, and then I kind of come out on the other side of it. Then there's seasonal depression, which is where I have depressive feelings for like the seasons when I'm feeling like I'm not getting enough sunlight. And so I think it's on a spectrum, right? And so I think depressed can be a feeling that you experience. Like I experience it once a month, but I don't call that me having depression. It's more of something I experience monthly. But I have had times in my life where I would say, yeah, I had depression, full blown depression. And then I think it's a little bit of like, I guess I'm trying to answer your question through the lens of my own experience, where I can see depression on one side, like it can be a feeling and it can be a temporary thing you're going through, and it can be, it can last a day. It can be a feeling that you work through over a few hours. And then it can also be something that you struggle with for months or years. So I think that's why this episode, I was a little timid to approach it, because depression is, it's many things, or it can manifest in many ways. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it was a good description, and also like thanks for sharing that. It's brave of you to share.
You might want to edit it out, to be honest, but we'll see.
I'm sure I'll leave it in. So do you think depression is a feeling, or would you say it's a clinical like a disorder?
I would say it's both, because I would say I feel depressed.
So I'm of the belief, and it might be a hot take, I don't think it does us any good to label these feelings as disorders. I just don't see the benefit. As someone that had depression and struggled with depression really, really, really bad for a time, and massive anxiety throughout my whole life, I would say. So much social anxiety sometimes that I could barely go to the grocery store. I could go to the grocery store. I don't want to paint that picture, but inside the grocery store, I might get so anxious I just leave without half the things I need.
And you could only go to Sprouts, not Albertsons, because Albertsons overwhelmed you.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, because I needed to know where the thing. I just didn't like the lines. I didn't like so many people in there. I just like really struggled, right? So as somebody that struggled with so much with depression and anxiety, I just don't see the benefit of labeling him. And I guess if you're going, the only benefit to me is to give somebody medication. I don't understand how else it benefit. Like if somebody came to me and they're like, I'm struggling with depression really bad, I would treat it like a feeling. I would not treat it like a disorder. Now, I think there's a lot of people that disagree with that and say depression is something that they have because of the chemical imbalance in their body. Sure, that might be some cases, but I think there's a high percentage of cases that the chemical imbalance in your body is due to the feeling being present all the time. Just like in the movie Inside Out, when anxiety takes over, depression has taken over your body. And yes, you are sick. You're struggling with mental illness, right? And I would say mental illness and emotional illness go hand in hand, but we call it mental illness mostly. But it's a feeling in your body has taken over your body. And so now your thoughts run wild, or you're just lethargic, you can't get up in the morning, but it's a snowball effect. So at some point, this feeling started. There was a point where you started to, every person that has depression, at some point, there was a first day where it was a level 1, and a level 2 and a level 3. They didn't go from 0 to 10 unless there was a catastrophic event, which does happen too. But I'm talking about the creep up, the slow creep up depression. And this feeling starts to take over in your body. And I'm speaking from my own experience. So this is not scientific, but I do believe this to be true based on everything I've read and my own self-discovery. So it was a slow creep up over years of just like years of feelings in my body coming up and kind of feeling like not enough. And I would counter it with something. I would always look to counter it. It was always a balancing act. So if I had these depressed feelings, they might take over my ability to do something one day, but I'd usually outwork them. And that was my methodology for balancing it. I would outwork my depression. So I'd find a way to get a promotion. I would find a way to get excited about something. I would stir something else over here like a distraction. And it worked. And I think it actually does work if you wanted to balance in that way. Like it worked for me for a long time, just outworking my depression and just going to work and focusing on a goal, a task, kind of getting really laser focused on something. But it never pulled out the root of the depression. The root was the pain of my childhood and the underlying self-belief that I wasn't enough, because when you face rejection from a parent so young in your life, it can put a really deep-seated self-doubt, an inner dialogue that's really deep down there that I had, that was, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, and just need validation in some other way. So I counterbalance that a lot. And this is, if like, as we read about people who struggle with depression, this is a lot of times the case. Something happened with their parents, something happened in their childhood. They might have had a great childhood, but they were the middle child that was overlooked. Like it could be anything. It could be your teacher at school. It could be anything in your life that has set you back, where you picked up a narrative in your brain that I'm not good enough, or I'm not as good as everyone else, or some kind of painful thought about yourself. And if it's whatever it is, it's deep rooted in that pain.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be I'm not enough. It
could be anything.
I'm worthless, nobody loves me, or I'm unlovable. I'm not smart. It's any really heavy, negative, deep-seated belief can be at the root.
Yeah, and
many beliefs can be at the root.
Yeah, and it's not always a battle you're losing. Like I said, I was winning for a long time, but it was 7-3. It was 6-5 some days. It didn't become an issue until I was losing the battle 4-6, and the depression started and that was sparked by some negative things that were happening in my life. When the scale tipped on me and I actually faced a really difficult situation for the first really time in adulthood, it kicked off the depression even greater, because then I was being faced with rejection by somebody in my life, and it just kicked and sparked up a lot of the old stuff that was already there for me.
Well, so the your partner is rejecting you, which is poking your original wound from your father. And even a little poke when you're wounded feels like a knife just to the jugular. And then it spirals and it gets worse because you've already got a wound there.
Yeah, so I believe, I'll get off my soapbox, but I believe that depression is a feeling that a lot of people are carrying, and they're winning the battle when life is good, but as soon as they face something hard, it uncovers this bigger thing that has always been there really in the first place, but we're just too scared to face it. It's a feeling in your body, and any one of us can struggle on any given day with it a little bit more than another. It's not a sickness like the doctors have labeled it. I think that's the worst thing that we could have done for anyone with depression, is label them depressed, and then now they just feel like they're an outcast from society in a way, just like anxiety. Like,
Yeah, I want to not caveat, but I do want to say, as much as yeah, I don't totally buy into labels being helpful either, but I do think if someone is experiencing depression at a level where they really need immediate help and they are not able to help themselves without medication, then get the help you need no matter what that looks like.
100%.
So
I'm
it's
not,
not saying don't, you know.
but here's what I would tell that person. Do you understand what depression is? It's just a feeling in your body, and you're kind of stuck there, and this feeling is so big that it's taken over any other feeling. Like, I'd actually suggest them watch the movie Inside Out and realize that your depression emotion, and we all have it. I would say I have it too, but yours has taken the wheel and it's driving your life. And so we need to wake up your other emotions and also find out what triggered this emotion to feel like it needed to take over, because it's taken over your body, and we need to figure out why, and kind of go into that if you're comfortable. If you want to really heal the root of this, I would suggest going to therapy, getting a coach, getting someone who's walked through it before, going to recovery. Like, they do a better job at this in AA than they do at the psychiatrist's office. Not all psychiatrists, but a lot of psychiatrists will just hand you it's like a 15-minute meeting. They hand you antidepressants.
And you know that from experience, huh?
Yeah. No offense to anyone that helped me, but it wasn't near the help that I got in coaching.
So you went, explained that you were experiencing all these depressive symptoms, and all that was given to you was a prescription, nothing outside of that.
And maybe a suggestion to go to therapy, but no real sales pitch on why, because they make money off prescribing the drugs. It is a kind of locked up system by the money and the income. It's really sad, and I just think that any kid that's struggling with depression it's going to be different if they're a kid than an adult. I think we need to talk about it in high schools. I mean, I've said this before. I think there should be an emotional wellness class at school, not just like a teacher at each school that's kind of the counselor, but like that every kid should have a class, like a period of their schooling, just like English, just like I think it's 10 times more important than math and English. To me, is your emotional and mental health. If we have mental and emotional healthy people, they can learn better when they're mentally and emotionally healthy. But when they're mentally and emotionally ill and struggling, they're not going to learn well. They're scared and they don't pick up new information well. So we need to talk about this in schools, but we also, need to get people to understand that they're not struggling with sickness like when, one of their family members had COVID. They're struggling with an emotion that is triggered in like a trauma response. I believe depression is a trauma response. I'll say that.
So, what are your thoughts on women who have depression like right after they have a child?
Postpartum depression,
Yeah.
it's probably more of a little bit of a chemical imbalance going on. But I think, like any depression, just like your PMDD, if you want to treat it holistically, you have to do the things that counter it, like move your body, take a walk in the sunshine, counter your thoughts, take good care of yourself during that, get good sleep. It's a snowball effect. So when the feeling of depression comes up in your body, no matter if you have a natural chemical imbalance and are more inclined to depression or not, or it's a trauma response, the solution is the same. It's do the things that counter it, move your body, get some good social like activity with friends, like, play a sport or something engaging with people, get some sun, don't go drinking, don't drink alcohol. It's a depressant. Don't stay up late and then find yourself not getting good sleep. Don't overwork during that time. There's a lot of things not to do and there's a lot of things to do. And I just think the recipe for treating depression is the same no matter what type of depression you probably have. But if it's a trauma response, getting to the root of it is going to be how you actually heal.
Right. And I think that you're right in regards to your own experience, but I just don't totally see it as one size fits all or one reason why someone has it. Like, I think it can be unique. I think it can be from past trauma. I do think it can be chemically imbalanced. I do think it can be genetically predispositioned. I do think it can be generational trauma. I think there's a lot of different reasons why, or like me, it can be come monthly because of my hormones. Like, I think there's a lot of things at play.
Yeah.
So I would be hesitant to say, here's why you have it and here's how to fix it as a one size fits all.
100%.
So I think it's unique to the person and to the situation. But I do think there's a lack of education and awareness around depression. And at least in America, there is a heavy culture of just take some meds. But it actually, I would say before it was like, just take some meds. It was a little bit stigmatized and taboo. And like, you wouldn't even want to admit that you had it because it was embarrassing. And I think then it went through like, okay, it's a little bit more normalized, but it's embarrassing to say that you take medication for it. And I feel like now, at least, I mean, we're in California, which is a little bit more progressive. Admitting that that you have depression or you struggle with depression and you're on medication isn't as stigmatized as it once was. And I think that's a really positive thing because no matter where anyone's view stands on where it stems from and how to heal it, I think we should all agree that if someone is struggling with depression, they need help and we want them to get help. And I'm kind of a proponent for, I always lean towards trying to heal some things naturally, but I would never tell someone not to get medication, especially someone who's really, really struggling. So,
Yeah, this episode is not meant to treat people with depression and tell them what to do. There's no way we could do that in a podcast where we don't know who we're talking to and what they're going through. But I think if we can speak to the average human who is just struggling with the feeling, which I believe is 90% of the cases out there, is just struggling with the feeling of feeling depressed.
yeah, and I would say that's where I think curiosity is such a powerful tool of totally up to you if you want to believe that it's chemical imbalance and all you need to do is take medication for it. If that's what you want to do, go for it. What I would challenge on that is, do you want to be on medication forever? Because when is it, like, how are you, are you always going to be on medication? Or do you want to get curious about yourself and figure out maybe if there is something, some past trauma or some root that you can go in and heal so that you don't actually have to be on medication? That's what I would advocate for.
Yeah, I used to tell people that when they'd be like, "What is it like?" when I would tell friends or whatever that I got on antidepressants, they'd be like, "What is it like?" And I would say, it's like one to 1.5 beers in, like one IPA deep. That's what I would say. It feels like one IPA deep, like it just took the edge off, you know? Well, it just numbed how I feel, like it took the feeling away. But the problem is exactly that. Like it was fine, but it also made me insanely tired. Like it made me so tired that I was having trouble staying awake well, I was also not sleeping well during it too. So like there's a lot of things that were going on with me at the time, but I think that it just takes that edge off and then you don't know how you feel. And so it's going to be hard. I don't think I could have found some of my triggers and really, I don't think my brain and my body would have allowed me to process some of my memories under the influence of alcohol or antidepressants. I think it was a numbing agent. I think I needed to feel them,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to get really, really safe. So this is like, how do you heal depression? Like for me, as I created safety in my mind and my body, which I mean by that is my mind is not going to reject what my body brings up, and my body's not going to reject the thoughts that my mind brings up. They're going to find some alignment. And I believe that's kind of like the spiritual side of it, is in your spirit side, in your spiritual health, you can find body and mind aligning better because you aren't identifying with one or the other consistently. You can kind of take a step back. So like that's what I believe I go to in meditation. This is like, I don't even know. This is guru-y, but in meditation, just like when I enter a cold plunge, I if I enter a cold plunge, my body feels like it's in pain. And so I have to get away from that. I have to disidentify with the pain and tell my body I'm okay. But my mind can start to go, get out, get out, get out. So what do? I breathe, and I breathe through it, and I actually disengage from the mind and the body. So where am I? I believe I'm in the spirit. And like that's what I believe. And in that kind of spirit self, true self, I believe that I have the ability to be curious about the body and curious about the mind and kind of weave them together a little bit better. But I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry.
Don't doubt I don't think you should doubt yourself in sharing that. I think like I could tell you have this like thought in the back of your mind about what are people going to think sharing
People are
something
gonna
so
think I'm
out there.
nuts.
But I think that I think if we hopped on the mic and we shared the same opinions that everyone has, this would be a boring podcast. So I think sharing that unique perspective and is actually what you should be doing. So
it's what I believe.
I would encourage you to not censor that. But I also, being your fellow podcast host, know how hard it is to share
really bold things.
Bold things, yeah.
That's the best way that I can to say like I'm experiencing this. And so when my body, that's where I was going. When my body brings up your body stores your trauma. Your mind probably does too in your subconscious, but your body does. And like when these feelings, like the only way that we really can have memory is through emotion. So like what sparks a deep memory is emotion. And if you don't have any emotion tied to the memory, like that's what I believe the purpose of our emotions is for our memory. Because if there's no emotion with the memory, the brain doesn't really store it, and it might remember it, but most of our big memories that we have in our past have like a strong emotion tied to it. And that's just how our brain processes and our processing system works, right? So if you have big emotions tied to a past experience that's really negative, and your brain doesn't want to remember that, or it feels like you are going to reject this memory. If I allow this memory to come up, you're going to wig out, your body's going to have a gnarly response to it. So the only way to start allowing these memories, that's why people take, mushrooms and MDMA and stuff to help them process these memories, and in therapy or somatic experiencing, like you can create some energy and emotion to spark, and then it can spark up these memories. But I believe you can do this sober, meditating. If you start to create a safety in this is just my experience. When I am meditating, if I really want to, and I want to deep dive, I've told you this before, I can go into my body with like a pickaxe and a Band-Aid and Neosporin, and I can go to some of these darker memories, and I can tell my body like, I'm okay, I'm safe. I can tell my mind it's okay to let this come up. And if I start to, it feels it, I can feel in my throat the toxicity of it. Like it's like an acid reflux kind of happening. And it's like my body's trying to get out some of the toxins from these. I don't know. It doesn't even make sense, but this is not a scientist telling you this, or a doctor. This is totally 100% just personal experience. And I can feel in my throat the kind of toxicity, and I can say, and when that happens, immediately in my body or my mind go, no, 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 no. Because I have some memories that I used to remember, and now that I've allowed my body to see them in full, I go, wow, I remember like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, these memories kind of starting to come up, and I remember rejecting them. I remember my mind going, nope, my subconscious going, nope, I can't see that, can't see that, can't see that. So what am I doing? I'm living in denial of my own self. And so as you start to bring these memories up and you really want to face them, then you start gaining self-acceptance. You start gaining self-compassion. You start forgiving yourself of these experiences, of things you've done in the past, or things you've encountered, or things you've witnessed. Like if you saw something crazy, like some of the stuff I didn't even do, it just I saw, I witnessed, and it was so gross, or like so I was too young, or it just didn't feel right, So I rejected it and you just trash canned that thought or that memory. But if it really happened, my body kept the score. And so as I've learned to create a safe place in my body and learn and tell myself, like, I can handle anything that I've gone through, like anything I witnessed, anything I've done, like I can handle it. I can forgive myself for anything, because you're just trying to figure it out through life, and you're just a product of your environment. And yeah, if you made some really dumb mistakes, if you got, no matter what, you still have to forgive yourself. But that's the like play by play of me sitting in meditation going, Dave, like, this is okay. It's okay. It's okay. Let it come up. Let it come up. All right, this is what happened. Okay. I can view that. I can see that. Man, I freaking hate that I did that. I really, and then I like apologize. I apologize to God. I apologize to myself. I apologize to whoever it affected. And I go, it's okay that you made that stupid, silly. Some of them are just like embarrassing moments of like dropping food in front of a bunch of people or something like that, But you just like, you let things come up. And as you get used to witnessing your own experience in full, you start to be able to be your own self-validator. And you don't need external validation for your experience, because you validate your entire experience. You validate your entire life. And yeah, do you remember it perfectly? Probably some of these memories might not even be accurate, but you just try your best to validate yourself and go through the motion. And it's really been helpful in curing my depression, because then I can go, holy crap, like, this is real. I've healed. I feel the toxins exiting my body somehow. Like, my body's like, okay, letting this tension go. So I don't know, is that cancer? Like, was that tension like a cyst or cancer that was starting to happen in my body, and I'm loosening it and letting it go? Like, I've read books on that. It seems to kind of make sense to me. I don't know for sure if that's real, but I can imagine a person who's had a bunch of really tough, just brutal experiences in their life and really shameful things, holding on tight, not wanting to see them and not wanting to witness their own identity. And I could see how your body could start to get tense and create cancer inside of you. And so I'm not saying this is the cure to cancer, but I am saying I believe that it is a cure to depression, and it was the cure for mine.
Wow. That was so impactful to hear, and how you articulated it. How did you learn to begin to do that?
With help from a man who became my first real witness and safe place to a couple men, I'll say, a couple men. One of my best friends just became such a place of safety and no judgment that I could tell him anything and he wouldn't judge me for it, And then another man that I hired as a coach, basically a mentor, and witnessing some of that stuff, and then a group therapy class where there was several men in there doing the same exercise. Just like in AA, they go up and they say, "Hey, my name's Dave. I'm an alcoholic." You basically say, like, I'm Dave, and I'm struggling with jealousy, or I'm struggling with depression. And then they like dig in, and like you go through this program of reliving your own experience in a way, like writing letters and really just becoming a student of your past. And he would always say, the hardest person to know is yourself. And I'd be like, what? How does that make any sense? I know myself pretty well. Like, I live with myself all the time. And he'd be like, no, the hardest person to know is yourself, because you're not witnessing we live out of these eyeballs, and we see everything, but we don't see ourselves until the mirror was invented. Like a camera, a video camera, and a good one is the first time we've ever been able to actually like see ourselves in real time, or go back and like witness what we sound like, what we look like when we talk. And that was until recently. So like we kind of are looking outward for this validation that like I exist, right? Like you get me, you see me, and we need each other to validate our experience. But you can go inward and start to validate your own and allow live in your memory. Like everyone's so worried about dying and losing this life, but how you'd rather watch TV and watch a fake story of a bunch of other people than sit down and watch the story of your own life. And I wasn't until I sat in my own seat, like, and watched the movie of my life without judgment and with compassion on my own self that I actually started to see the depression go away. I started to see the anxiety dissipate, and it wasn't immediately. But as the depression and anxiety went away, the ball started rolling in the right direction. Because I believe that depression is a snowball effect. Like as you start to have that feeling, it comes up, it gets you, and then you don't want to get out of bed. So then you're late to work, and then you don't do as good at work, and then you start to worry about that. And then you become less motivated to do other things. And it's just this downward spiral, and it can get you in the matter of like 5 days. That's what people don't understand. You could go from completely joyful to completely depressed in like 5 days. If something triggers you, if something comes up, even in a day.
It's actually much faster for me when
PMDD.
Yeah, it's like
instantly.
Yeah, it's on. Yeah, and I've had to learn to be better in awareness of actually kind of going back to what we talked about a little bit. The beginning of the episode was I wasn't aware at first what was happening. I didn't understand it. I was like, oh, I'm just like extremely PMSing. And I think even in chapters where I've had depression for a few months based off of an event that happened or that triggered it, I wasn't always aware that that's what it was. But learning, oh, I'm feeling depressed right now. And based on all these symptoms that I'm experiencing, once I was able to identify it, that actually was really helpful for me because in identifying it, I could go, okay, I need to go really easy on myself right now. One of the quickest things my mind goes to when I am experiencing depression is self-critical. My thoughts are just like, they spiral of essentially beating myself up in my mind. And so once I realized like, oh shoot, I'm experiencing depression right now. I know it's hard, but I have ingrained in myself, be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. And when a critical thought comes up, I go, that's not you. Like, that's the depression speaking. Here's actually what the truth is. And I have to be really gentle and I have to go, I am feeling lethargic today. I'm going to honor that. And like, that's okay. Like, this will pass. Like, I have to almost coach myself through it. And I found that to be really helpful. But when I wasn't able to recognize it, it snowballed way worse because I would believe the critical thoughts and then I would beat myself up for being low energy and lethargic and not getting enough done and be like, it is really helpful to move and exercise when you are depressed. It's also incredibly hard to get the motivation to go and move your body. And so for the times I didn't or wasn't able to get myself out the door and moving, going, it's okay. Like you weren't able to, and that's all right. maybe make yourself a cup of tea, do what you're capable of, and that's enough. So really learning to identify when I was feeling it helped me to go, oh, I need extra compassion on myself right now and extra kindness. I need to be extra gentle. So to not make it worse than it needs to be. So I don't know. I say that because I think generating awareness around when you're feeling that way is really helpful. And then also being kind to yourself is really helpful.
Yeah, and like we said, there's no one size fits all. So like I would hate the thought of somebody listening to this and them being like, I should take that advice, or I should do this, or I should do that. It's not I should. Like the medicine could be get sleep. It could also be go for a run. Those are polar opposite treatments, and I don't know what you need. Like without talking to you. If I was talking to someone, I think I could figure out. I could write up a plan for holistic, coaching for depression for sure. And I don't know, I'd have to have a lot of conversations with that person. But I think that there is not a one size fits all. Like you have to go exercise or you have to go for, get sleep. I think I would venture to say more than not, it's probably exercise. But sometimes it is just a good night's sleep. Like if you haven't been sleeping, depression tends to be more on the side of, I think, always wanting to like be lethargic and in bed, but actually never get good sleep. And that you actually do need to sleep and get some actually good sleep. But, what will do that is a lot of exercise will help you sleep well. And just, there's so much here for the ways to cure your own depression are there's 1,000 different ways. Eat well, but it's not one thing leading up to your depression. But I think that for me, it was a trauma response. I was in a triggered state and having a massive, massive trauma response to something I hadn't healed since I was a kid. That was mine. So that's kind of the person I'm talking to throughout this episode is people like me.
Yeah, I've kind of an interesting question for you on that. So your biggest depressive episode was from a past wound getting triggered. You've done an immense amount of work to heal that wound. Do you think that you could experience another depressive episode again? Or do you think you've healed and that wouldn't happen? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I would never want to be the person that says like I could never experience it again. I have depressed feelings still all the time. I just admitted to you recently, like today, that I was having some. They come up for me all the time, but I think I've dealt with my biggest wounds. That's an assumption. That's the thing. Like, I'm not going to make the statement that I started the podcast saying I was unaware of, which is an assumption that I know myself completely. Like, I don't know if there's a memory deep down that I don't know about, because I don't think, and this is what so many people I think would be like, you're absolutely nuts for believing this. But I believe that most people don't remember their entire past. I would venture to say almost no one remembers completely their entire past. Like very few people. Andrew Huberman said he has like a fantastic memory of like almost everything, which is a gift, right? But most people are ignoring or deleting things from their past. And what stories have you deleted that your body has stored the trauma from? And that's the mission of healing. And I don't know, not everyone wants to go that deep with themselves. Not everybody wants to find it. I do. Like, I'm a person that's like, if I'm storing some trauma, let's light a candle, get on the meditation mat, prepare a journal. I'll sit for 3 hours with myself and just go deep in it. Like, I love it because I've seen the results. I'm like, it's just kind of a fun thing now. I like psychoanalyze myself like I'm my own little test dummy. I think I've dealt with enough of my childhood wounds and things like that where I don't think anything is going to surprise me and cause me to get triggered into a massive depressive episode. And I think that I'm comfortable with the feeling of depression to the point where like I've learned some tools to deal with it. And I think tools are really helpful when you face those. But I'm not going to say that I couldn't spend months in a dealing with it, but I know what I would do. I would know my action plan. That's for sure. And that's what I didn't have when I did go through the darkest hours. I had no action plan. My action plan was the bar. And that was just that caught negative momentum, and it was like putting gasoline on a fire. When you're depressed and all you do is go to the bar, please reach out to somebody that might have been through it and solved it in a more holistic way than with alcohol.
Yeah, which is a depressant, as you kind of said earlier.
Yeah,
the worst thing you can do when you're depressed is take depressants, which is drinking.
Yeah, because you're looking for that high to counter that low, and you get it. You do get the high, maybe. You do go out till 3 a.m. and, have a great night or party your ass off with your friends, or you have stories to tell that are funny or whatever, or you black out. I don't know what you do. But the lows, the days after, like just in that trigger you just throughout your constant state of being with no alcohol is so low. That's just such a sad place to be. And yes, your life now when you've dealt with depression is much more level. It's not so high and so low. And that's hard. That's still hard for me to face. I loved the highs. But I've learned that if I'm going to make it through this life and live a good, purposeful life, the highs I can appreciate the medium a lot better. Just playing basketball with the kids in the front yard, or going to yoga, having dinner with you without needing to do 3 shots of tequila to enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you can enjoy dinner with me without drinking.
Oh, that was so hard.
Yeah.
That was really hard for me. I couldn't enjoy. If you suggested a place that didn't serve alcohol, I was bumming. I was like bummed.
Yeah, it's sad reflecting back on that chapter.
But that's that's so normal for so many people, and I just like want to sit with them in that for a second before we end. That is so normal, and if you haven't treated your depression in any way, and you haven't learned about yourself in a way to understand what triggers it and how to counter it, and if you're just countering it with alcohol, that's super normal, and it's how society counters depression. I would say like 90% of society probably counters their depression with alcohol or some other drug, and there's other options for you if you want them. Not everybody has to heal.
Right.
But
I would venture to say if you're listening to this podcast, you're at least a little bit curious.
Yeah, and we're just here to talk about it because it's changed our life in such an incredible way. Like I can't imagine going back to where I was even 3 years ago, even 2 years ago. My heart breaks for anyone facing their demons.
Yeah. I think my reminder would be that you're not alone, and there's people that want to help you. So reach out if you're struggling. Doesn't have to be to us, but reach out
to someone.
Yeah.
And we are here. Like we want to help people. Love you.
Love you too.
Bye.